Welcome back. This is Andy Young, the Mountain Money Man, and we're doing part 2 of our series of seeing how we help improve your retirement future. We last in our previous video talked about Social Security, as well as looking at having a detailed plan of where your income is coming from in retirement and how that can be affected by the choices that you make. Now, this next part that we're going to cover in today's session is going to be talking about risk. Looking at the level of risk that you're comfortable with and seeing, does it make sense to reduce this where possible? Now, I've got one of my cousins, Maggie. Maggie loves to travel, and she recently traveled out west, went out to the Grand Canyon. And as they were leaving from Las Vegas, where they had flown into, where we're at an event, they decided, we're going to hop in the car, we're going to head and look at the Grand Canyon. Now, as they headed out, they realized that, hey, you know what? Gas tank is a little bit lower. We probably should get some gas. And they looked it up and they said, you know what? There's a gas station actually in the park. Now, as they went and enjoyed the park that day, they left and they headed out to the gas station only to find that it was off season. And because of that, the gas station was closed. So they plugged into the GPS to find the nearest gas station as they were leaving. Sun was starting to set. And unfortunately for them, they just kept staring at the gauge to see how many miles until empty. They kept driving, kept staring, and luckily, just right as it was about to run out of gas, they made it to the gas station. Now, I asked afterwards, because I've had people that have been out west, and myself included, that how did that sunset look? I'm sure it was just breathtaking as you were heading out, with the mountains framed there with the sun. It's just one of the most beautiful sights that you've seen. She said, honestly, we didn't even look at it because we were so concentrated on running out of gas that we didn't pay attention to the surroundings. We see in retirement, it looks a lot the same way. People don't pay attention to the little things that can greatly affect their picture. And they start staring at, am I going to run out of money? And they stop enjoying life on the day-to-day. So when we look at risk, we want to make sure when we're taking on that risk, does it make sense? I call it the funnel of money. So here's our money funnel with this, that when we look at money that we need for the next 1 to 2 years, ideally we want to have that sitting in boring cash. I know, it's not fun. But with cash, we know that regardless of what's happening in the stock market, if we look at last year, down with that, the year before up, the year before that, down a little bit. So the market is all over the place. But with our money, if we know that we've got the extra that we need to supplement our already coming in guaranteed income sources like Social Security, pensions, or annuity payments, we don't have to worry about that because the money's sitting in our account. And each year, if we see that the market has grown or made changes, we'll decide, do we want to raise some extra to be able to have that ready to insulate us? As we get further out with when we're going to use that money, we can see with that the further out that we get, the more risk we hypothetically can take on. So money that's sitting in something like a Roth IRA that I might not use for many, many years into retirement, I can take advantage of potentially putting more risk around that. But money that I know that I need, I want to minimize that risk. If you were looking to make a big purchase, I've got a couple that I'm working with that they're looking to purchase an RV here in the next 2 years as they enter into retirement. That's a big decision. You're talking about $130,000 decision. Do we need to have that money at risk if we know we're going to spend it? Absolutely not. Why does it matter? Well, let's look at a picture as far as to paint this of what are one of the risks that can affect this. And for this picture, we're going to look at two brothers. Both of them have $500,000. And both of them, when they calculated what did they need to supplement their income, they found that they need to pull an extra $30,000 from their portfolio every year. The difference between the two, Steve retired in 1990. His little brother, Bill, retired in 2000. So let's look at this. After 10 years of retirement, what really is the difference for them? Any guesses? Well, if you guessed that it was the same, you'd be wrong. This is a very different picture between the two. Steve retired in 1990, wound up after 10 years having $1.1 million. Bill, with the exact same risk profile, invested the exact same way. After 10 years, only $109,000 difference. So what's the difference? It's the sequence of returns that happened in their accounts. Both of them started off the first year and lost money. If you look back at retiring in 1990, what happened versus the year 2000, both of those were down years for the market. However, for Bill, unfortunately, he walked into the dot bomb burst. 2000, 2001, 2002, the market down, down, down. You might be sitting there saying, well, it's not going to happen to me. I'm not worried about it. Unfortunately, we find that bear markets, where there's been a loss of greater than 20%, happens of roughly every 5.7 years. So we see that that happens. And unfortunately, sometimes there's a long recovery before we get back out of that bear market. The average change with that over the bear markets is a loss of 31%. So if you logged into your accounts today and you saw that 31% was missing, would you be upset? Well, the good news is that there's things that you can do to help change this. Now, I like to do a little bit of woodwork from time to time. And a few years back, I decided I had my great-great-grandfather's tools that he'd built many coal camp houses with. And I was going to use only those tools to build a nightstand to have in my house. I just wanted to have that as a harken back. You can see there on the left, that was kind of the tools that I was working with. You know, the nice hand crank drill to be able to go through, hand saws. You're trying to make everything work the best that you can. 4 hours later, I was tired, I was sweaty, and I was ready to pick up a modern tool so that I could actually get the job done. Financially, we see that a lot of changes have happened as well. Tools have been updated. Even from just 10 years ago, you've seen great changes. So what does that look like as far as when we see some of those tools that exist to help lower the risk of our portfolio? Well, if we look here at this graph, we can see the S&P 500 is our red line. So if we look back to 2017, we see that we lost money, but then we had this nice growth all the way through 2021, and then we saw this steep hill down. Now, unfortunately, that happens. The market can go up, the market can go down. Historically, it goes up and to the right, so people are happy long term. But when you're retiring and you're pulling money from this, you can't just think long term. You have to think of money when I need it. Think back to that funnel that we talked about. Well, one way that people say I'm going to protect it is in 2017, if you went to buy a 5-year CD, at that point in time, the CD rates for 5 years was 0.78%. So if you in 2017 said, I'm going to protect my money, I don't want to lose it, you can see that slow and steady. Now I don't have to worry about the ups and downs. It's just ups, but unfortunately, inflation is growing at more than your account. There is one other option, though. You can look at indexing. There is an index strategy that would allow you to participate in part of the ups, but eliminate the down years. So you can see in this instance, in the years where there was a loss, my money is worth the exact same amount. But in the years when there's growth, I get part of that upswing. Again, when the big downs, my money stays the same. I've locked it in and I'm not going to lose that. So this is a way that a lot of people will protect their money, decrease the risk, but still have the opportunity for the money to grow at a rate better than what they could get in a fixed product like a CD. So we look at that indexing strategy as a way to help us out. Risk matters. You need to find out what risk you're willing to take on, because that's going to let us know, what do I have going on? So understand your risk tolerance. Many people have never looked at their accounts altogether. So when they look at their accounts finally to see the bigger picture of the risk that they're taking on, they can start to make decisions on, do they want to change what they're doing? You might find that you tell yourself that you're very conservative, but your investments are in fact aggressive. Maybe you've never made a change since you first enrolled in your 401k. And that when we look at this, we say 20 years ago, that would have been great. But now you're walking into retirement. Maybe we want to look at doing things differently. I had someone that asked the other day, hey, if I'm using my 401k and I move to a Roth IRA, does that make it safer? No, it's the exact same amount of risk that you're taking on if your investment is the same. We need to make sure that not only are your accounts set up properly, and people talk about diversifying with their investments, we also want to talk about diversifying with their risks that we're taking on so that we don't have everything in one bucket. We also want to make sure that we have that detailed spin down plan that we talked about in part 1, because we need to know when you're going to access the funds to know how much risk we can take on. There are financial tools that can help you mitigate the risk. So like we talked about in that last slide, we're helping us to protect the principal, or maybe even produce a lifetime income, creating your own personal pension. So you can take a block of your money, You can go create a income source that you can't outlive. Even if your account has dropped to being worth nothing, you'll still continue to get a check. Or maybe even it will give you both of those things. And lastly, making sure that you have a plan for long-term health care. Unfortunately, this is one of the risks that I see that can wipe out a family. If you have no plan for this, all of your dollars are part of the plan. And if you're thinking that the government will pick up the tab, unfortunately, they won't. When we look at long-term health care, if you've spent down all of your money, then the government steps in as the form of Medicaid, and you become a ward of the state, and you'll go to the first place that a bed is available. So if that's something that you're worried about as far as looking at your risk and you want to take advantage of seeing what risk you're taking on in your own portfolio, click the link below so that we can schedule a time and create that risk plan for you. Finally seeing what risk you're taking on in all of your different accounts and finding out, do you want to make any changes? Not saying that you should. I'm just saying have a clear mind so that you can see the full picture. Now, for the third part, we're going to be talking about unlocking taxes. Now, the tax code is one of those confusing things that most people don't take advantage of because they assume there's nothing that can be done. But if you join us for this third part, you're going to find out what are really the differences that you can make when it comes to taxes and the tools that can help you out with getting there. I'll see you tomorrow so that you can see that next part on taxes.